Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Everyone online and some who I see cameras working for, others who are also part of this meeting without cameras on right now. Welcome to a meeting that we like to do for prospective investigators. We're going to talk today about fiscal year 2022, which begins about a year from now. It begins on July 1st, 2021. And what we want to talk about is what's known as the State of Wisconsin Groundwater Research and Monitoring Program, WGRMP. And it's listed as such, but people might know it from different names. They might know it as GCC funding, GRAC funding, system funding, DNR funding, groundwater funding. This is all part of what is a coordinated effort that's led by the Wisconsin Groundwater Coordinating Council. And there are representatives from the major agencies who have a portfolio of groundwater issues in them, and plus a member from as a citizen representative on the Groundwater Coordinating Council. So you may hear some of us refer to GCC, Groundwater Coordinating Council. You may hear us refer to GRAC, Groundwater Research Advisory Council, which is that which advises the UW system funding. And you might hear some other words for the types of funding that we have, but it's the Wisconsin Groundwater Research and Monitoring Program. As we go through this webinar today, we're going to ask you to please mute your microphone, depending on the number of people who are involved in this today. We may just free everyone up at the end of this presentation. Use the chat window if you have any questions. So I'm Jim Hurley. I'm director of the University of Wisconsin Aquatic Sciences Center, which houses Sea Grant and the Water Resources Institute. And I am the system rep to the Groundwater Coordinating Council. I'm joined by Jen Hauxwell of our organization, Jim Zellmer and Bruce Rheineck from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, and Stan Senger from DATCP, Department of Ag Trade and Consumer Protection. Next slide, Jen. Hoping to get to the next slide. You're doing that, okay. So the goals of today's webinar, Bruce and I will start out in the early part about this. Mainly it's to give information and to get some questions from all of you. It's been a really difficult last 5 to 6 months as we've dealt with the issues such as COVID and also the issues of racial justice and such. And as things flare up in Kenosha, it's great to have your attention today. And you might want to think about some of those two topics as we move forward too, and how they might intertwine with some of the priorities that we'll talk about later on, the COVID response and where we might be next summer. And then also about issues such as diversity, equity, and inclusion, and if those could be woven into a proposal for the joint solicitation. So the main thing is that we want to share the information about our funding levels, how to apply, what the review process is. We also want to have the ability to connect you with agency staff as you develop ideas. When I talk about agency staff, I guess I would put the UW system in there for what our priorities are. You might want to contact Jen or I or people at the Water Resources Institute if some of the priorities may be better in tune with some of the DNR priorities. You might want to get in touch with Bruce for that. And Bruce, I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
No, yeah, we encourage people to reach out with their ideas and get our feedback and make sure they tailor something that best meets their our needs while following their interest in a research project. And if you can't reach me, also feel free to reach out to Bill Phelps, whose contact information is at the end of this presentation.
Great, thanks, Bruce. The other thing that we've sort of put into our call for proposals over the last few years is to think about actionable science, to think about designing a project that has stakeholders and partners in mind, and maybe weaving them into your proposal. The fact that we're doing applied research here means that someone would like to apply that type of research. And if you can involve those types of stakeholders in your proposal, we feel that it leads to stronger and better proposals. The joint solicitation is shown here on the right-hand side. The deadline is Friday, October 30th. Next slide, Jen. Okay, so just some overall general information. I've already talked about the GCC, you know what that stands for now, and the WGRMP. But the goal of this particular solicitation is to identify and support research that really gets to the key questions to advance our understanding of groundwater management in Wisconsin. We set our priorities not only based on the state's priorities, but on what our individual agency or the UW system, what we might have for priorities. But we're looking at managing that resource, managing groundwater in Wisconsin. Bruce, anything to add on that?
No, I would just say I kind of think that's kind of potentially an interesting strength to researchers for applying to this funding, is that agencies are really looking to this information to change how they implement policies or do things on the ground, so that like the science you do here could well change policy or how the resource is managed in the relatively near term. So like the questions you pursue here can lead to changes in Wisconsin.
Great. I'm going to add another term to describe our program. I'm going to use the phrase joint solicitation. So some of you might have heard, I get funded through the joint solicitation. Actually, you get funded through the Wisconsin Groundwater Coordinating, or the Wisconsin Groundwater Research and Monitoring Program, the program itself. The joint solicitation is that we take a team approach. We have one call per year, and it's a one-stop shopping for those researchers that want to get involved in groundwater research. So all of our agencies come together, and we have a joint solicitation. So we solicit proposals for the UW system, for DNR, for DADCAP, all at the same time. And this is what's known as the joint solicitation. So as we look forward, we're thinking that we'll probably have cumulative up to $400,000 available for new projects for fiscal year 22. We ask for projects for up to 2 years of funding, and they can range anywhere from 10 to 70K has probably been the high. 70K might be a little bit high. Typically, for a campus that has graduate students, we're usually talking about graduate student funding, tuition remission, a little bit of supplies, and a little bit of funding for summer salary for a faculty member. That's what a typical project is like. That typical project used to be about $20,000 when I started working on this in 1998. That typical project now is probably more around $50,000 a year when you consider all of the increasing costs over time. The deadline for our proposals is 3 p.m. on October 30th of this year. So the day before Halloween at 3 p.m. is our bewitching hour. Next slide, Jen. Okay, so there are some eligibility requirements, and it's based on where this funding originates and how it's intended to be spent. The Water Resources Institute has been entrusted with funding from the state of Wisconsin through the University of Wisconsin system to fund academic staff or principal investigators or anybody who has principal investigator status. First of all, principal investigator status is all faculty at all of our campuses throughout Wisconsin that are part of the UW system. Academic staff can also apply because they can get temporary principal investigator status. So the funds are restricted for faculty within the system or academic staff with principal that have achieved principal investigator status. They have to be the leads. They have to be the PIs on the project, and the funding will be distributed to that campus that gets the award. non-UW system researchers may be included as associate investigators. There are some intricacies of any type of funding that may go out that might be campus specific, but the funding is intended to be used by the UW system. That's originally how it was set up. That may be a little bit different for DNR and DATCAP, and I'll let Bruce respond to that.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Kind of the short, there's kind of like a 2-point answer for DNR and DATCAP, and Stan, if I get something wrong for DATCAP, jump in and correct me. But if you qualify for UW system funding, you qualify for DNR or DATCAP funding. We also can be a little bit more broad in that if you are just a state or local agency without any UW involvement, you could also get DNR and DATCAP funding. However, we tend to encourage people to team up with somebody from UW system, as the proposals are often stronger, and then you're also still eligible for UW funds as well. So it lets you apply for a bigger pot of money. But at the end of the day, we do have a little more flexibility in hiring or in awarding projects to non-UW system, other state entities or agencies. Not federal, but state or local Wisconsin entities. And also, if you are really just targeting DNR funds, we have a little more flexibility on the supplies and services line. And one typical example that DNR is willing to go above the 20% is if you're, say, sampling for PFAS in groundwater and you want to take a lot of those samples. Well, that can quickly be a large part of your overall budget. And if you reach out and work with us, DNR could be okay with that.
Thanks, Bruce. So there are a number of budget requirements and considerations that you will want to follow when you're putting together a proposal, and they're all in the call for proposals or in the RFP that's been released. There are two that well, Bruce just alluded to one of them, but the two that we have the most questions, or that our individual review panels will ask why certain things are in exceedance. And that is that faculty salary and fringe benefits shouldn't be more than 10% of the individual total grant. But if needed, you need to provide justification. The reason for this is I think that all of the agencies will agree with the UW system is that students come first. We're looking to train that next generation of groundwater scientists. If you look at many of the regulatory agencies in Wisconsin, many of the students have been funded through this program that become members of state government or students that go on from graduate careers to remain here in Wisconsin. The other thing is that in general, the category supplies and other costs together shouldn't exceed 20% of the individual grant. That's where we talked about the flexibility, especially with laboratory costs that may come in for some of the more expensive types of analyses that you may have to go outside to get. One thing I did want to say here, though, is that this doesn't include tuition remission. So tuition remission is not part of that 20%, and where tuition remission is pretty common across many of these grants. All of these are listed in the RFP, and we can continue to answer questions on these types of things. And one more slide, Jen. Yeah, so I'll talk about UW system priorities because we do list some, but we're associated with a Water Resources Institute that's one of 54 institutes across the U.S. And we've all sort of aligned ourselves to three major issues in groundwater or in surface waters, or depending on what Water Resource Institute you talk to, how well they're aligned for that. We decided that we're looking for fundamental or applied nature of groundwater research in engineering, social sciences, economics, protection, management, but that they fall under one of three categories, that we're talking about quantity, quality, or resource management. One issue that we do have is that projects focused on wastewater or drinking water need to make a clear link to groundwater science. So if you're looking at something, for instance, say to remove arsenic from water or hexavalent chromium, if you can show that that's an issue in Wisconsin and you have a technology that will apply to that, those are the types of issues that we might be looking for. But again, discuss your ideas with anybody on this call today, any of the people who are leading this call today, or with any of the agencies more directly. And again, more details are in the joint solicitation. I think I hand it over to you, Bruce.
Yes, thank you, Jim. The DNR has similar interest in the broad categories, but what we have in the RFP is kind of highlighting some of DNR's current and ongoing highest priorities of information needs that we have at the moment. And so one of those definitely revolves around nitrate in groundwater. It's, probably the single most common contaminant over the health-based standard in the state. And so we're really hoping for, or would like to see proposals on, would be studies that evaluate the full range of sources and sinks of nitrogen, so from agricultural activities. So that would, taking into account how much goes into the crop that's removed, what's left in the residue, how much stays in soil storage, how much leaches to groundwater, how much is volatilized. So kind of that whole concept, so that we can also get, or other studies that could answer questions about, if we change management strategies, how have we improved, where does the nitrogen end up? How have we improved groundwater? And can we get ideas on different loading or crop rotations or crops that could do better than some of the current systems out there? And also along that, like, are there research that could show how to evaluate and assess those changes and long-term impacts and trends would be one big area. Another, just to highlight a couple, would be there's a lot of information and attention also lately to the risk from pathogens, both bacterial and viral. And so studies that look at quantifying that risk and describing not only their presence, but the health risk associated with viable organisms would be helpful. And what are good strategies for cost-effective ways of assessing that risk and changing it. And then there's a whole realm of kind of like emerging contaminant issues. Perfluorinated substances, or PFAS, are certainly one of those. A need that we see is how to effectively model those fate and transport, because they're a little bit different than some of the other contaminants that have typically been modeled. So models that can handle them better would be good. But one thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about emerging contaminants is the angle of make sure there's not a whole, that you're not just adding to the existing body of research elsewhere, but making it Wisconsin specific, or how to address the situation in Wisconsin is kind of the range of stuff that DNR is looking for, as well as the other items ongoing, basically quantity or quality concerns. Thank you.
Yeah, and My name is Stanley Senger. I'm with the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. Just wanted to, I guess, talk a little bit about our DATCAP priorities. We have, for fiscal year 22, 150,000 that we are going to commit toward research proposals in 2022. In the RFP, our interests are broken out as both general interests and then specific areas of interest. Our general interests don't really change frequently from year to year. They've remained fairly the same over time, but our specific areas of interest definitely change year to year based on what we see as research needs that will further our own agency goals of managing pesticide uses to prevent groundwater contamination in our state, or to help us possibly devise a management control that would make sense, or to come up with best management practices for a pesticide that might be showing up in groundwater where we haven't seen it before. So as you look at the DATCAP priorities and think about applying for something under a DATCAP interest, know that the specific interests, we do have kind of a priority scheme that we apply to interests that are either general versus specific under our overall DATCAP priority list. And we do tend to give a little bit more favoritism to those that are submitted under the specific interest rather than the general interest. But know also that when you look at the specific interests, these are not exclusive. If under our specific interests, you'll see here that we have imidacloprid, which is a neonicotinoid insecticide, showing up in 2 of the 3 different specific interests that we've put out for this year. The general idea is what we want you to take away is that we're looking for something that can help us devise potentially management controls for imidacloprid, or a better way of using that pesticide that leaves less residues in the groundwater, particularly in sandy areas and situations where it is actually getting the groundwater. And that brings me to, I guess, to another point I'd like to make, is that for any proposal, it's always good for PIs to know that DATCAP does have a large amount of pesticide data in our groundwater database. That data can be shared with PIs to help them frame a proposal, and we would encourage PIs to contact us early in their proposal preparation process, so that we can help them understand what is available to them to help them frame a better proposal. We also have, like Bruce said, I'd like to reiterate that we do like fresh research, or research that hasn't already been done. So we currently have a number of projects that are ongoing in the state. I think we have 3 of them right now that are involving neonicotinoid insecticides. All of them are 2-year proposals that are ongoing that we are funding. So I guess what I'm pointing to here is that if you're looking for a research proposal and you're searching the web to see if it's already been done or something's already been done on it, just know that there are those proposals out there that are actually actively being funded right now that you should also be aware of. And the only way you would know about those is if you contact us ahead of time, because the research isn't available until those proposals actually, or until those projects are actually completed. And really, I don't have anything else to say other than to reiterate, I think that what Bruce mentioned about state agencies is true for DATCAP as well. we can allow a little bit more flexibility on the different funding categories for labor and things like that if you really need it. So just justify in the proposal, follow the directions in the RFP and you should be fine there. That's all I have.
Great. Well, thanks, Stan. So I'm Jen Hauxwell. I'm the Associate Director at the UW-Madison Aquatic Sciences. I work with Jim. We administer the University of Wisconsin Water Resources Institute for a UW system. And I'm going to go over some of the practical proposal instructions where you can find that information and a few other items. So just in terms of instructions, I just would direct you all to go to sort of the landing page for the Groundwater Research and Monitoring Programs Joint Solicitation. It's pictured here. If you go to the Water Resources Institute, you can find it under research. We've got a number of sort of support items for you. You can see there's a category here called downloads. And so the actual announcement, the joint solicitation is there. There's a proposal guidelines checklist that will help you kind of conform to all of the rules that we have for how you put the proposal together. There's a cover sheet that's referenced in the instructions that you can download. Also the template for the proposal narrative that you can download. And then there's also a budget template that is referenced in the instructions that you can use there. So all of the pieces are there. If you go to the actual joint solicitation itself, the instructions start on page 11, and they're fairly detailed. So, I'd encourage you to look over them pretty closely before you get started, and then, one item at a time as you assemble your proposal. And that takes me to how you submit the proposal. We have a submission and review sort of web-based interface for PIs to submit their proposals, and it's something that the Aquatic Sciences Center uses. I'm sorry, it's really branded pretty strongly as Sea Grant, which is another program we administer, but we use it for our Water Resource Institute as well, so don't let that throw you. But if you get to this landing page, this is the right place for submitting your proposal. Instructions on how to use this interface are in the joint solicitation. If anything comes up, you have any difficulties, don't hesitate to reach out to me or to Tom Zhang. He's our web person and the person who helps us run eDrop for our center. So again, any questions, don't hesitate. I'd encourage you to log in early, and if you're planning on submitting a proposal, just make sure you can get in early, and also strongly encourage people to submit their proposal well before that deadline. The system automatically closes at 3 o'clock on October 30th, and so it kills me if I have phone calls at 3:05 of people who were really close but didn't hit that submit button. But we have to kind of go with the rules of the competition. So please have everything in and give yourself a little bit of leeway just in case you have any difficulties. Okay, the review process is, I would consider it to be pretty rigorous for this state competition. The dollars are very precious, and I think we're really careful in how we review the science that we end up funding. So there are a few pieces that are common to all of the agencies. For everybody, there's an external peer review that the Water Resource Institute coordinates. We get at least 3 external peer reviews from national or even international experts in the field. They really tend to focus on the technical merits of the proposal. And I've got the criteria listed here, so you can kind of look through those. One that I wanted to highlight that we added a couple of years ago is this piece on outreach. So take a close look at this. We're finding researchers are getting better at incorporating their science with end users, and that's probably going to lead to a greater likelihood that the science could inform some decision or action. So I'll talk a little bit more about the emphasis on outreach, but I wanted to mention it here as well. Then there's a subcommittee of the Groundwater Coordinating Council. These are people from Wisconsin. So first we have this sort of outside of Wisconsin technical review, then we have a group of Wisconsin experts come together and do a review as well. And so everybody, all of the agencies in UW has access to those reviews. And then each agency has sort of its own internal process. UW System, for example, takes the results of both the external peer review and the GCC subcommittee review to our Groundwater Research Advisory Council, which is made up of a number of groundwater experts from different UW System campuses, as well as state agencies. And there are some other members as well. And then other agencies might attend that meeting. They might have their own internal agency reviews as well. Different programs might have some funding within agencies to contribute, and they would have their own review, all informed by what I described already. I wanted to just sort of, again, highlight that outreach piece. And so there's been this shift in higher education with a desire to make, one of the reasons is a desire to make the science more actionable. And I think we're moving from sort of the service to outreach to more of an engagement model. And with engagement, you know, it's a lot more intense work. It relies a lot on developing relationships, and that takes a lot of time. We recognize the time and the challenges that go into that. But we do think when those kind of relationships develop and those kind of conversations happen with stakeholders or end users, we do think there's a greater likelihood that the science will inform knowledge and will also inform decisions and actions. So we're kind of encouraging people to move in that direction if they're able. Really, the reason is, you know, our goal with this joint solicitation, Jim mentioned it at the beginning, it's to identify and support scientific research that will answer key questions and basically advance our understanding and effective management of groundwater for the state. We want to be good stewards of this resource. We also, just on a practical standpoint, you know, demonstrating impacts is really important for future funding for this program. It's also something that I think is a very Wisconsin thing. You know, the Wisconsin idea is about impacts and taking knowledge from researchers out to the communities across the state. So I think that's also something that we're all very passionate about. So our vision as we move forward with this program is really to help strengthen those bridges between researchers and stakeholders. And if you combine science with, you know, educated, engaged citizens, communities, businesses, and industry, and also resource managers and policymakers, we think that's what it takes for sound decisions and actions. So we just encourage you to do your best to try to build those bridges as you think about the questions you might want to address in a proposal. Some ideas we have to help you increase the impact of your research. If you work with end users of your work throughout all phases of the research, including now, you know, when you're defining the research question and developing the project, we think that leads to better proposals. And so a key take home for this webinar is to connect with agencies now. All of the folks that are here presenting are happy to talk to anybody that has an idea. I'm happy to talk to people as well for UW System, as so is Jim. Consider partnerships between natural sciences and social science and policy researchers. We also encourage you to think creatively, incorporating the arts, stories, analogies to better connect with diverse audiences. We do have a Wisconsin Sea Grant Actionable Science website. This is a partner program to our Water Resource Institute. So if you want to take a look at some of those ideas, and there's a toolkit there, you can do that. And then work with your institution or your funding institution's outreach and communication staff to help make connections and tell your stories. If you're funded through UW System, our Water Resource Institute has a communication team that loves to highlight the research that folks are doing, and not just at the end, you know, throughout the project. So we are happy to work with you, and I think agency communications teams are happy to as well. One thing I thought of too that I didn't add to this list, but to demonstrate some of these connections you might have with stakeholders or end users, consider submitting letters of support as you develop your proposal. Those are allowed. There are instructions on how to do that, but that tells reviewers that you've made some of those at least preliminary connections. And with that, I think we're ready for questions. Thanks everybody for your attention, and we're happy that you're interested. If you have any questions, we do have the chat window where you can ask questions. I'll take a quick look. I also think that we probably have a manageable number of people in the audience here too. If you want to unmute, please feel free. I think we can moderate that so that people aren't talking over each other, if you'd like. And if the other agency folks want to join me with video, please feel free to share your video now. And then Jim and Frisbee, if you guys see anything in the chat, please let me know. I don't see anything yet, but my screen share is sort of inhibiting some of my views that I normally have. So just let me know. Nancy, are you maybe unmuted, but we can't hear you? So I can see Nancy might have a question. The audio isn't working, Nancy, but if you want to type it in the chat window, we could do it that way too.
Hi, can I insert a quick question?
Yes, please do.
I looked through the solicitation a little bit, but I just wanted to clarify. In the application, do you specify which of the departments you're applying to primarily?
You do. There's a place in the application that you can prioritize.
Okay.
You know, just a tip, most people include all of the agencies. It, kind of keeps all of your options open. But you can let us know which one you're kind of have in mind as your sort of top priority, but then you can include others as secondary or tertiary as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
If there is an agency that you're really thinking about though working with, again, I know this, we've said this a few times, but reach out to one of the agency reps as soon as you can.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Okay, I see Nancy's came up. So Nancy says, we are working with a collaborative of 5 counties. Is it best to work with our researcher prior to connecting with you? Should they be our point person or should one of us? Likely it will be UWS or DNR. You could do it either way, really. I think it probably would be most efficient if you had that PI involved from the beginning, Nancy, but you could piece this together however you think it works best for you. The sooner you have that team together and the sooner you're able to have that conversation with agency folks, I think the better. And feel free, anybody else can add to that if they'd like.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. This is Bruce. I don't think it matters much. You feel free to circle back with DNR twice if that's what you want to do. And then if you have questions about who at UW might be the best to work with, maybe we could help with that, or just hey, this is our idea. Depends where you are in your idea stage, but if you're we think this meets your priorities, are we on track? We'd be happy to have that conversation with you too.
All right, any other questions? Feel free to unmute if you do. We'll wait for just another minute. Okay, I think that we've got the questions we're going to receive today, but if anything comes up, don't hesitate to reach out. We've got a list of people that are in the joint solicitation as contacts, also listed here on the screen. In addition to these folks, you can reach out to anybody else that presented today as well. And if you have trouble finding them, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I can help connect you. Any other comments from DNR, DATCAP, or Jim? Do you have anything else?
Jen, no, other than the fact that when we talk about actionable science, I hope that when people are thinking about outreach in this sense in future proposals, that they think about outreach to diverse audiences too within their outreach plan.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, well, with that, thanks everybody for your time today. We will post this recording. Any questions, don't hesitate, and good luck with your ideas. I appreciate your work in this area. Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone.
Thanks for putting this together.
Thank you.
Thanks.